Hello guys, TavHD here and welcome back to another video, and today we're going to be taking a look at what I've bought on eBay. And as you can probably tell, this is a MacBook of some description, and this is a specific model that I've wanted for about 10 years now, I'd like to say. Pretty much for as long as I've been interested in computers, and specifically Apple computers, this is a machine I have wanted. And from the outside it just looks like a standard unibody MacBook Pro. This is specifically a 2011 by the way, but something that makes this one special and stand out from most of them, if I can open the lid, that is the fact that it has the high resolution matte anti-glare display. Now I can't really show it properly at this angle, but as you can see, this thing does have a matte display and the silver bezels. If you're not familiar with what Macs of this era, the unibody ones, tend to look like, I can kind of demonstrate with my Retina here if I get it into frame. They're just like sort of glossy and have no real bezels that are visible. So this is quite a cool looking one to see, being the anti-glare one. I remember the first time I ever saw one of these, it was in a YouTube video, and I just thought, wow, that looks cool. I had no idea what it was, I just knew that it looked a bit different to most of the others I'd ever seen, and I thought, yeah, I'd quite like one of those. And there was a point in time when these were still rather modern, where I thought, yeah, let's get one of these and use it as my main machine. It's when I was still using a 2009 polycarbonate MacBook as my main machine, before I got my Retina, so this would have been a very good machine. But there's one thing that puts everyone off these 2011 Pros, and that is the graphics. The AMD graphics like to die, and when they die, and that pretty much makes the machine useless. Now this specific model has actually had its logic board replaced by Apple, however it has now decided that it doesn't want to live again and is kind of a little bit broken. I bought this knowing that there's a risk that it might not work. The seller said it might work, it might not, it's a risk you've got to take. I bought it as broken, so I've got no comeback if this thing is completely dead, but I guess that's something we can find out today. So all the specs were in the eBay listing, although I can't actually remember, I've had this for quite a while. All I know is this is a 15-inch Core i7, I think it's 2.6 GHz, although I might be wrong. No RAM and no drive in here, and also no optical drive, because this thing was pretty well spec'd. It had 16 GB of RAM, 2 SSDs in it. Like, the owner cared about this thing. They've had it from new. I'm only the second owner to ever have this. So yeah, this was a pretty good machine back in the day. It's just a shame that they do all fail. Now there are a few ways with patches to disable the dedicated graphics and just run on internal, because these do have dual graphics. Potentially that is something we can look at if we can get this thing to do anything. We will just have to see. I'm not really going to be planning on getting this thing up and running today. There'll probably be a series about this, trying to get it running. If we can get it working, then I can probably do some upgrades and fun stuff with it too. So today we're just going to take a look around it, try and turn it on, and just see if there is any hope, because if there's not, then I'm guessing this is dead in the water, and I'll have to think of something else to do with this thing. So let's just do this like a normal video where I've got a computer, and let's just take a look around it. So starting off on the left hand side, we have the majority of our ports. We have our first generation MagSafe, we've got our Ethernet, we have a Firewire 800, we have a Thunderbolt 1, we've got two USBs, SD, audio in and out. Now this being a 2011, that means these are only USB 2. To get USB 3, this would have to be a 2012 or newer, and of course that is only Thunderbolt 1. Thunderbolt 2 didn't come for a few more years. Now it is quite cool to see that we do have Firewire on here. We may need that for target disk mode or something like that in the future, for diagnostics or something. It's difficult to know, but that is quite possible. If we look at the lid, it's actually in very good condition, considering this thing is now 11 years old. Yeah, there's a few little marks on it, but honestly nothing too bad. I've never owned a unibody MacBook Pro before, but out of the ones I've ever seen, I'd say this is probably in the best condition, so I am pretty happy about that. On the other side, we have where our optical drive would be. Right now that goes to nothing. There's just like a caddy inside with nothing in it. That's why it makes a weird noise, just because there's loose things in there. Could put an optical drive back in here, or I might do the dual drive thing like the previous owner did, maybe RAID 0 or something. That would probably be silly, but also quite cool. On the back is the hinge. The hinge is kind of a bit wonky. Maybe this has been taken apart before and not put back together properly. Maybe it's been dropped, I'm not sure, but I'm not actually too bothered. And on the bottom is where all the wear is. You can definitely see there's a dent in that. Might be able to pull it out, not too sure. And it is very scratched and scuffed down here. Shouldn't be too difficult to see, although I'm not too sure. Also, it is missing quite a few screws because recently it has had quite a lot of things taken out of it and put into another machine. Now I think that because the bottom of the machine is so light from having bits taken out of it, it's making the display very difficult to lift up. Like the whole machine just lifts, and even if I hold it down, it's really difficult. I'm not sure if that's a hinge thing or just because the machine is so light at the bottom, but it is something we can look into. This thing does still have a battery, which is good to know. Alright, so I've now got a better view for you so you can see the whole machine. And of course the main thing and the reason I bought this is the matte display. I just think it is such a good looking machine. It kind of looks like a pre-unibody first generation MacBook Pro or a PowerBook having the silver bezel. Also a bit like the MacBook Air for the longest time, but then when you look down at the keyboard and see the black keyboard, that's how you know this is a unibody. And these keyboards, they feel so good. They feel just like the late 2009 polycarbonate MacBook, and they are really nice. It looks like the Retina keyboard, but it's not, because this is a thicker machine. There is more room for travel, and these keys just feel more solid. They move a little bit more, and they don't wobble as much, and they just sound not as cheap. I've always found the Retinas to sound a bit clicky and cheap feeling. This is a properly solid keyboard, and I like it a lot. Apple keyboards have progressively got worse over time. Now, I think the latest generation keyboard on their portables is quite decent. I've not really had much time with them, but I feel like this and maybe the first generation MacBook Pro keyboards, probably the best keyboards Apple's ever made, and just over time as computers got thinner, they had less room to put them in and they had to make compromises. Kind of a shame, but it is what it is. I'm used to my Retina keyboard, although if I had a choice I'd prefer to type on this. And something about this keyboard which is a little bit different is the fact it's not a UK keyboard. If you look, we don't have a UK or European style enter button. We've got the little one from America. We also only have the $sign. There's no euro or pound. And all the keys say what they are. Like shift says shift, caps lock says caps lock, tab says tab. On my Retina, there are all little pictures telling you what it does. But on this, they have actual words. Not sure if that's because they think that Americans don't understand symbols or something. I'm honestly not too sure, but that's pretty cool to see that this isn't actually a UK keyboard. And I don't know where this machine was initially bought, but I'm guessing not in England if this is the keyboard it has, or maybe you could specify a different layout. I'm honestly not too sure. But at the bottom we've got the trackpad, same size as the Retinas, but unlike my mid-2015 Retina, which has a Force Touch trackpad, these still have the older diving board style ones. After using a Force Touch one, it's very difficult going back to one that you can only click at the bottom. Like I can click wherever I want on mine and it registers a click. If I wanted to click up here on this, I'd have to tap. Of course the Retina one doesn't actually click, it's all sort of vibrations, but it is very realistic, and I think going back to something like this would throw me off and it would take a while to get used to it, but I'm sure it's something I could do. Something else that's different to the Retinas is the power buttons up in the corner, and where the power button is on the Retina is where the eject button is on this. Of course the Retinas didn't have optical drives, so they did not need that, and I think the first MacBooks to have the power button in the keyboard were the MacBook Airs, although don't quote me on that. So what I'm now going to do is just close it and look at the front there is our power light on there. And something I neglected to mention on this side is the battery percentage indicator. That is cool. I wish newer ones still had that. My MacBook Pro, my Retina, has been on charge for about 5 hours, and the charge light on the charger still says it's not charged. It would be cool just to press a button on the side and find out exactly how long off it is from being charged. Of course, now I'd have to just turn it on and find out. Can't really be bothered, so I'll just have to be patient and wait for it to finish. And I'm kind of running out of patience waiting to turn this thing on, so I will grab a charger. Let's press the power button and see what happens. Okay, so it's been a week since the last clip. I'm not really sure what happened. I kind of got carried away but not really doing anything. So that is fun. I've got a MagSafe charger. This is actually an older one than what this would have come with, but that doesn't matter, it will still work. So let's just plug it in and see what happens. Since it's got no RAM, I'm guessing it will just beep, but let's see if it even has the mental capacity to beep. And the power light has come on down there. Not sure if you'll be able to see that. I can hear the fans, and there we go. We just got a beep and now the power light's gone off. Then it beeped again and the light flashed. Let's see if it does that one more. Yeah. Yep, so that is telling us that there is either no RAM or a RAM problem. I know there's no RAM in this, so let's put in a few sticks of RAM and then see what happens. Rather conveniently, I've already taken out the screws that hold the back panel on. There wasn't too many screws, so it didn't take too long. And here we can see the inside of this machine. So down here is where the battery would have been. This is where the RAM goes, hard drive goes there, optical drive would be there, but instead we've got an extra drive caddy, which is pretty cool. There's some dust in the fans, but it honestly doesn't look too bad. So what I've done is I've taken 2 RAM sticks out of my 2010 iMac, and we should just be able to insert these straight in. I believe they are of the same specification as what this machine would have come with. So that is 1 stick in. Let's put the second one in. There we are, 2 sticks of RAM installed. That will give us a total of 4 gigs. I'm guessing this would have come with more from the factory, but 4 will be fine just to see if this thing does anything. Of course, it's got nothing to boot to, because it's got no boot drive, but we should be able to get to the blinking question mark, hopefully, and maybe we can boot into the recovery menu and just see if that does anything. And maybe internet recovery is something we could try at some point. I'm honestly not too sure, but now let's see what happens. The power light has come on again down there, so maybe it's just going to come up with something, or maybe not. Let's press the power button and it's blinking, and now it's come on solid white light. We got a bong and something's going to come up, it would seem, and with the magic of an anti-glare display you're not seeing any reflections, so that is pretty cool. But you probably can see these whiter patches on the screen. I'm guessing that's impact damage from something. I was aware of that. Kind of sucks, like the main magical thing about this is the display, and that's the one thing that's got a bit of damage. But for now, I don't really care. Let's just see if this thing does anything. It's a bit dirty, but that's nothing that can't be resolved. And we've got a question mark, and I can see a little bit of graphical artifacting on that, reminding me of some of the power books I've got. I'll try and get a close-up of that. Hopefully you can see it, but I'm not sure if you can. But there's like some subtle pink lines across the entire screen. It is visible when the grey comes up, but not really otherwise. Yeah, I can just about see it if I'm concentrating to look, but if I didn't know, I just wouldn't know. So I'm not even sure if that shows up on camera. But let's turn it off, and let's turn it on again while holding down Option, see if we can get the boot menu to come up. And it looks like it is loading. Yep, we've got a cursor so we can see that the trackpad is working. It's clicking as it should, and my Wi-Fi network is showing up. I must say, this is a very nice looking display despite the slight damage and also the artifacting. And I can see the artifacting again here, but just moving the cursor around, it's not like lagging or anything like that. Let's try connecting to my Wi-Fi. Let's see if the keyboard does anything. Looks like it is. I'll press the funny shaped enter button and hopefully it'll connect to my Wi-Fi. Then I'm guessing it'll come up with internet recovery or something. Yeah, now this usually takes absolutely ages to do anything, but let's just click it anyway. Yeah, this may take a while. I probably won't go all the way through with it because there's no drive for it to install to anyway. And I'm not sure, does internet recovery install the original OS the computer came with, or the latest one it can run? I think depending on a different key combination you can change that, but I'm not sure what it is by default. But we should be able to see if this graphic stops, like whether the computer crashes or something, because quite often when these have graphical issues, like this one clearly does, like I can see it slightly, they just like hang and completely crash. So I'm guessing we'll know if that happens when that stops moving. So I actually need to leave the house in about 10 minutes. So if it's not done anything by then, I'll have to just unplug it, but there's not like anything I can really do with it now anyway. But yeah, let's just see if this does anything. So it's still going, and I was hoping that I'd be able to get a close-up so you can see the artifact. And if you look at the grey parts of that image, you might be able to see the lines. From a distance they look purple, but up close they look kind of blue, so it's kind of difficult to see. And if I'm completely away from it like that, I can't see it at all. But then when you get close, you can see it on the grey. You can also see it on the entire screen. It's very subtle, but it is definitely there. Alright, so it's been going for a while now. The fans are still going. It's got slightly warm, but nothing concerning. It's not like it's going to set on fire or anything. It's still pretty cold, but then again in this room right now it is only about 1 degree, so that's probably helping it stay cool. But I am going to have to turn it off now because I need to go do some other stuff, and I can pretty much see that this thing to some extent is working. As the person said in the description, it works sometimes, it doesn't work other times. It's completely a risk that you're going to have to take. Right now it looks to be working with some graphical problems. Maybe if I was to do more intense things it'll just completely die. That's something we're going to have to look at in the future. But for now, I'm going to leave this video here. Then this will be the end. We've seen that this thing does boot up with some RAM in it. Hopefully in the next video about this, we can get it booted into an OS and just see what happens, whether we do that through target disk mode or we install a drive in this thing. I'm not too sure yet, but I guess that is something we can work out. So thank you for watching this video. This will now be the end. This thing is kind of working, which is cool. And yeah, this is just a great looking machine. I can't stop looking at it. When I'm looking at it, it makes me feel like I want to do some proper work. Like, to me, this generation is peak MacBook Pro. I think the retinas are great, but there's just something about the way these look and feel. It just feels like a machine that you would like do important things with. And I would like to get this thing working properly so I can kind of do some important things on it. I think that would be cool to see what it can still do in the current day, because of course it is 11 years old. So I think that would be interesting, but of course that all depends on whether it continues working or not. So as I said, that will now be it for this video. In a future video, which will hopefully be very soon, we will be looking at this again, getting it to boot to an OS, and hopefully having a bit of a mess around with it. So thank you very much for watching. Hopefully this was interesting in some way, and if you would like to see more of this, please do subscribe and stick around. There's also a lot of other Mac things coming at some point, I'm sure. So if you're interested in Apple things, I would suggest you stick around. So as I've already said, this is the end and I need to just shut up and get on with doing other things. So thank you again, and I will see you next time. Goodbye.